What's going on, cuz? It's your boy Nate Be Lit. Cause Nate really does be lit. And we are back again with yet another pre-week market outlook. So I hope you guys are all well. Let's get straight into it. So what happened last week? Last week, from a fundamental standpoint, we had some key data come out. So we had job jolts openings, or jolts job openings, should I say, which came out lower. What does that mean? That means jobs are starting to decrease. So if jobs are starting to decrease, then that means what? Essentially, spending will start to decrease because less people have money, which means obviously inflation will come down, interest rates will come down, so on and so forth, right? So jobs openings came out lower. We also had some stuff for the CAD. So Canadian dollar kept their interest rates the same as the last month. Now, this is due to inflation. They want to basically see what's going on with inflation. So they're kind of maintaining a wait and see approach. So because of that, they kept the rates the same. So the narrative is just going to continue being the same. I am actually bullish on Canadian dollar because the inflation rates will actually have been coming out higher. If I just come over to the CAD very quickly and just come over to CPI, we can see that it has obviously been coming up, 2.4, 2.7, 2.9, and obviously 3.2. So that means that investors are going to obviously be flocking to put their money into, Canadian dollar government bonds because they're anticipating, if you will, that over time, increase in rates will come. And if that's the case, they want to obviously be putting their money into where the yield slash return on investment is obviously increasing, right? So again, if I just come back over to this week, or last week, should I say. Now, so we had that for obviously the Canadian dollar. What else did we have? We had PMI, which obviously came out lower as well. It tends to be that when PMI is lower than 50%, it usually signals bearish sentiment for that, for the dollar. So seeing as we've come down from 51% to 49.9%, for me that's just an added piece of confluence for me to say that okay, we can continue still being bearish on the dollar. We also had euro, interest rates, which don't really drive that much really, because the only thing I mean for me personally anyway, because I trade euro USD, but that's driven by the dollar, not so much the euro. So I don't really, it's not really that important to me what happened with this. But again, it is a key piece of data because it's the interest rate for the euro, right? So if you are trading, I think is it the Russell, which is like a basket of goods for for Europe, similar to like US 30, for example, right? If you're trading that, then I guess that would have some weight on what was yet to happen. We had unemployment rates for the dollar, which actually came out higher. So higher unemployment means less people with jobs, which is obviously not going to be good for the economy. What else did we have? We had for the dollar, obviously NFP, which came out lower. So, the previous reading was 177. It also says 147 on here. Regardless, 139 is actually less, which means less job openings, less jobs, which means less money being spent, which means obviously, again, not good for the economy. So outside of that, unemployment rate stayed the same. So, not really much. Not really much to be said on that. So in regards to this week, it's a little bit lighter from a fundamental standpoint. We've obviously, I say lighter because there's less news. In terms of the weight of the news, it is pretty key this week because we've got CPI month over month, core CPI month over month, and obviously year over year, which is obviously going to be really important. I actually read an article earlier saying that the inflation rate for the dollar is meant to uptick. Now, again, I can only read the articles and get my, take my narrative from it. However, if we do have a uptick in inflation, then that will send the dollar bullish for a little while, at least for a month until, we start to see that kind of change over, or until we at least get like PCE come out as well, which is obviously the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, right? Now, we've got that on Wednesday, so that'll be pretty, hopefully be a pretty volatile day for us traders. We've also got PPI, which comes out on Thursday, which is the day after. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's going to be eyes open for me. Tuesday as well, but obviously there's less news, which means, maybe not all the time, but oftentimes means less volatility. But Thursday we've got PPI, which is another measure of inflation. You've got obviously CPI, which is consumer price index, which is obviously the inflation on consumer, consumer stuff. So foods and so on and so forth. However, you've also got, I'll wait for the alert to go. My trading view alert just went off. I'm guessing that's for UK 100, but I don't trade Monday, so it is what it is. But yeah, obviously you've got CPI, which is what I just mentioned earlier, consumer expenditure, consumer price index, which is obviously the inflation for consumable stuff. And then you've also got PPI, which is the inflation on how much it costs to actually produce products, which is also known as producer price index, right? If this comes higher, then that often will mean that, the price to make these goods or to put these goods together increases, which means those prices get passed over to the consumer, the customer, if you will. And obviously that means that, inflation will tend to go up over time. So that's what's going on this week. We've got some prelim consumer sentiment, which I'll look at, but I'm not really going to be that bothered about this week. But again, I will, keep my eye to it and see what's been going on. So moving over to the charts. Okay, it wasn't your UK 100 actually. Or was it? Oh no, it wasn't. All right, cool. So starting off on the dollar, right? So on the dollar, we can see, if I just can't step out for a minute onto a higher time frame for a minute, we can see that, we are bearish. If that's going to continue this week will kind of be determined on, what happens with the CPI come Wednesday. So I'm going to keep being bearish on that up until that point. If we continue to come lower on CPI come Wednesday, then obviously that will just continue the bearish bias, right? However, where we are still bearish right now, what did we have last week? So last week we came into, was this last week? I think this was last week. Yeah. So we came into the redistribution that caused this low to get broken, which was the larger redistribution. So this was quote unquote your reload, where this was the last redistribution that caused this to break, meaning that there were some last buy to sell orders in here, which the institutions would have liked to mitigate. So now that we've come into this area, we did have a distribution on the lower time frame. We did have a distribution in here, where we had sell orders coming into the markets, and obviously we ended up taking out this low. So obviously come not too long after that, 2 days after, we came back into that, and obviously now we've broken the order flow to bring us up here. If we just get the paintbrush real quick, we had an accumulation down here. This would have been my last reaccumulation, where we had this news candle from Friday. I think it would have been NFP. So we've obviously come up into the 50 and 80 of this here, supply or premium pricing, if you will, which is where sell orders will most likely, be added in, because the institutions want to sell high and buy low, right? So we had a very ugly distribution in here, which obviously caused price to break this low. So now we've come back into, supply of this price action up here. I want to see if price can obviously make its way lower from here. Again, if it happens before CPI comes out, great. If it happens tomorrow, great. I'll see if I can take some short-term sells. And I say short-term because obviously I don't know what's going to happen with the CPI come Wednesday, right? So we can come lower from here. It'll be great if we can. If not, that's also fine as well. If we get CPI come out higher, then what I'll be looking to do is I'll be looking to wait for some of the bearish market cycle to get taken out. So in this case, it will be if we can break this, and give a reaccumulation, then potentially we can continue, making our way higher for the time that we are seeing this little uptick of inflation. Hopefully it's little anyway, because I do want to entertain the sell side over the buy side, just because, longer term, that is my narrative, being bearish. Now, obviously, if we do end up breaking this, as well, then yeah, we can still, if I step out to the 4 hour very quickly, I'm very aware that we can make our way up into premium pricing of this previous larger time frame redistribution over here. Because what did we do on the higher time frame? We had a distribution. You can ignore these lines. I was taking a student through something, so let's get rid of those lines. But you have the distribution. Price gave another large redistribution as well. I just labeled that up. Got a redistribution here, and obviously we've got, supply, i.e. premium pricing at the 50% and above. So if CPI does come out and we do continue being bullish, if we can get some sort of, if we can get an accumulation and maybe give a reaccumulation to bring price higher, then we can entertain some counter trend buys, But again, that's probably not going to be, this week, maybe next week. It could be this week, but again, I need to see evidence of buyers coming in first before I even try and entertain that idea, right? So that's the dollar. So moving on to the euro, I'll just come down to the euro, USD. Cool. So euro USD. What am I looking at for this? So we all know that euro USD is obviously the complete inverse of what the dollar's doing, right? So if I'm waiting for the dollar to, make its way lower, then essentially I want to see euro USD make its way higher. This is going to be determined by, again, CPI. If CPI comes out lower, so right now CPI is at what it is year on year. CPI is at 2.3%. So if it comes out lower than 2.3%, I will continue being bearish on the dollar. If we come to, let's say, 2.4, 2.5% maybe, I know the forecast is 2.5%, but I don't care about the forecast. I want to see what actually comes out when we have the actual news release. So if it comes out higher than 2.3%, then I will start to look at taking some buys or taking buys on the dollar, which means taking some sells on this if we can start to give a bearish market cycle, i.e., distribution followed by a redistribution. So if we can get that on here, then great. So what that will look like on here is if we can break, so if we end up breaking this low, right? If we end up breaking this low and then coming back and giving a redistribution, then by all means, I will start to look for, some potential counter trend sells to bring us back down into, if you remember on the dollar, we were pretty far away from the 50%. Obviously, we can make our way down, to the 50% and below. So again, I'm going to be really just looking at what happens with the CPI and acting accordingly, right? I'm not going to try and guess the CPI. I'm not going to try and guess what PPI comes out on Thursday. I'm going to see the data and I'm going to act accordingly, right? So moving over to GBP USD, we have, it's going to be a similar story if I'm being honest, it's going to be a very similar story. Right now, no price action looks a little bit different to Euro USD. Like we've accumulated, and obviously we're inside of the previous, accumulation that accumulated out of the reaccumulation that broke this high. So again, I'm going to be more on the side of Euro USD if I'm being very honest. Like tomorrow, we're still in here and we build out a nice accumulation. I will look to take it. But outside of that, again, I really want to see what's going to happen with the CPI. I don't really want to be too hasty just before CPI, because a lot of the time when you do that, CPI can just wipe out your whole something, and then you end up, oh, why did I take this trade? Or why didn't I take profit before? So again, with this here, if we do get, a higher CPI, then that would obviously mean, that I would want to start to see these things start to make its way lower, and maybe this thing can just become a very large distribution to bring price back down to potentially down here. If the dollar's going to make its way up to its 50%, then obviously we can anticipate that GU and EU would do, somewhat the same, just on the inverse side. So where the dollar will be going higher up to that 50% that we spoke about, this will be going lower down to the 50%, right? So coming over to USD CAD. So USD CAD, as I spoke about earlier, I am bullish on the CAD as an individual currency. So if we come over to, the Canadian dollar futures, which is just the individual data on the CAD, right? What we can see is that if I zoom out enough, we are, if I come maybe to the 4 hour, we are bullish. We're in a bullish market cycle. We've accumulated, we've reaccumulated, we have reaccumulated. So and if I come to the 1 hour, our most previous reaccumulation is this here. Now, can price break this and continue coming lower and still be bullish? The 100%, if we break this, then I want to see what price does inside of this 50%, because this could all just be a distribution to bring price into here, so we can see buyers come in and send this thing higher up, right? So if that's to be the case on this, then obviously on USD CAD, it's going to be the opposite, right? So can we break this here? We definitely can, to come into the 50% and above on this here, right? Making this obviously a larger accumulation to just bring price up here. So I'm aware of both, but for now, where we are currently, price can reverse from this area inside of here, because technically it is the last redistribution to occur. So obviously when we come in here, if we start to see evidence of sellers coming in, what will that look like? That will just be a distribution. If we can get that and it's valid, then I'll obviously look to take some sells out of that. If not, if we don't distribute and we just continue going higher, then obviously I'm not going to take any trades inside of this, right? It's not enough to just see a point of interest. You have to see a point of interest, and you have to see evidence of, obviously if it's a seller's point of interest, then I need to see evidence of sellers coming in and actually trying to send this market lower. If I don't see that, it's kind of like accusing someone, oh, he burgled my house because he was wearing black, also the same color as the person that actually burgled my house was wearing black. That's not enough. I need to see proper evidence, right? So I need to see some proper evidence, and what that will look like on here is a distribution. If I don't see that, I'm not interested. So moving on. So coming over to USD/JPY, I am bullish on Japanese yen. So if I just come on to the Japanese yen for a minute, right? So if I come to Japanese yen futures, I am still bullish on this, right? So I know that right now the market is not really showing that. I do believe that this potentially could have just been a shakeout to obviously send this thing higher. Again, I'm not going to guess. It looks a little bit bearish right now, just because obviously if I zoom out a little bit, it doesn't look bearish, but I'm saying from where we are as of current, actually let me come down to the lower time frame. So the reason why I said that was because, let me move this out of the way. So the reason I said that was because this technically I was looking at as a previous reaccumulation when we were obviously making our way higher, right? But where we broke this now, I was like, okay, cool. From a technical perspective, on this low time, on this intraday time frame, if you will, technically it could we could look at it as if we're bearish, right? But I know because fundamentally we are bullish on this. I kind of don't want to touch it, so I'm leaving USD/JPY alone until we start to get some breaks of these highs. Once we do, then I'll start entertaining the buyers. This is why fundamentals are so important, just because it's going to tell you what direction you should be trading in, and if you can find a technical bias that lines up with fundamental bias, your trades are going to be a lot higher probability, right? If not, then it brings the probability lower down, and I kind of don't want to be taking trades at a lower probability if I don't have to, right? So for me, I'm kind of just leaving USD/JPY alone until we start seeing a break of some of these highs. Can I look at the sells? Yes, but it just wouldn't make sense for me personally. So if anyone out there that's selling USD/JPY, good luck, of course. I wish you all the best. But for me, I'm going to just wait for the buyers to step in and show me evidence that we are going to continue to be bullish. So that's all I've really got to say for USD/JPY, if I'm being very honest. Gold. So I was actually speaking to someone on TikTok who was professing his love for gold, and I just couldn't really understand it, so I kind of had to call it there. But yeah, gold, I mean, we're inside of a previous reaccumulation right now. We're in a bit of a funny place right now from a technical standpoint, because I know, okay, yeah, we've accumulated to obviously distribute, and obviously, we've come lower, and now we're technically inside of the 50. However, if we just look at what's going on a higher time frame, there isn't really much telling me to be selling right now. This to me just looks like we had a distribution to bring price lower, give a little shakeout, of certain, lows over here to potentially set, make our way higher, So for me, and again, in times of uncertainty, obviously we're in a place of uncertainty right now because of obviously, Trump's tariffs and so on and so forth. In a time of uncertainty, what tends to go up? Precious metals, right? So right now we're in a period of uncertainty, so there's no sort of mystery as to why we're continuing higher. For me, I just want to see, evidence of buyers stepping in here. I don't know if we're seeing it already. Not really clean anyway. So maybe what I will look at, for some point tomorrow, is if we. Okay, so if I look at this as an accumulation, if we give a little shakeout. So okay, cool. So if I can see price break this high, today or tomorrow, whenever, if I can see price break this high and maybe give give, come in and give an accumulation to send this thing higher, then I will look to do that. But again, I'm not going to be super like, I need to take this right now. Nah, it's Monday, number one. Number two, it's I don't know where price is going to be tomorrow. So I don't want to, I'd like to try and take as little energy mentally as possible on guessing and put most of my energy on, okay, this is what's happened. This is what I'm going to do. Right. So yeah, if we do break this and obviously come back in and give an accumulation inside of here, then I'll look to take it. Outside of that, I'll probably just wait for more clearer price action on this. So and when I say clearer price action, by the way, I mean at least like either break this here and maybe do something like that, or just simply break this high and obviously just come in and give another accumulation on the lower time frame. So that will be it for me. Silver is absolutely gone. I don't even know what this thing is doing right now, but I know that it is leading the pair at the moment, because if you look at where silver is right now, it's making its way higher, right? But if I look at where gold is right now, it's not really having as much energy right now. If I come onto like this time frame here, Training View wants to be playing games with me today. Right, so again, yeah, we look at where gold is right now. Yeah, I can see that silver's kind of leading right now. So I'm kind of just gonna play that accordingly. So moving over to USD CHF. So with USD CHF right now, from a fundamental perspective, obviously again in periods of uncertainty, we tend to see that the Swiss franc tends to make its way higher, because obviously people will be putting their money, Swiss franc is regarded as a safe haven, right? So in times of uncertainty, whether it's war, whether it's whatever it is, a lot of the time that currency will tend to go up, and obviously that is what's driving this currency right now, obviously being Swiss franc. So Swiss franc right now is bullish, so obviously this trades against it because it's on the right hand side. So for me now, I want to see price, now that we've obviously broken the market cycle to the downside right now. So this was obviously my previous reaccumulation, right? So we've obviously now broken it, and this was the last redistribution that caused price to break this low. So for me, if price can come into here and give evidence of sellers coming in, then I will look to take this thing lower. If not, and price wants to come up here a little bit higher, then I will look to take some sells from in here as well, only if I see evidence of sellers coming in. If I don't, I'm not interested. Like 90% of my trades, if not 95%, I always have to wait for evidence of sellers coming in if it's a sell area, or buyers coming in if it's a buy area. If not, I've just found personally that I end up losing more trades if I don't wait. So yeah, the rest of them I don't really know what's going on with these ones right here. For me, we've come into, for euro pound, we've come into this previous reaccumulation, obviously after us breaking the previous redistribution. So essentially we've broken the order flow to the upside now. So for me, we've broken this now. Could it be a shakeout? Yes. So that's why I'm like, okay, if I see evidence of buyers coming in inside of here, which we are seeing, I can't deny that, we're seeing buyers coming in right now. However, and we've seen a shakeout, but I need to see evidence of, I need to see price at least break this. Then I'll entertain this idea. Let's say price goes from here and maybe breaks this high, then what I'll do is I will look to maybe take something inside of 50 and 80, or if we do go from here, maybe I'll have a look at something inside of here as well. But outside of that, I'm not really interested, right? So I'm gonna just it's not on my higher priority, I'll put it like that. NZD USD and AUD USD, similar sort of situation for them. Like obviously I know from a fundamental perspective, from when I last checked anyway, New Zealand dollar is driving this, and obviously it's pretty weak just because from a fundamental perspective, they do a lot of commerce with China. China's their biggest importer, right? Exporter. So they buy a lot from obviously New Zealand and Australia. But China, if China haven't got money, or if they're not in the greatest position from a from an economic perspective, then they won't be spending as much money with New Zealand and with Australia. So if that's the case, and obviously NZD and Australian dollar obviously driving these pairs, I would expect these things to be coming lower. So right now, we're approaching, supply, which is obviously 50% and above. So if we get evidence of sellers coming in, great. If not, again, it's low priority for a reason. I'm just here waiting for them, really, if I'm being honest. So again, if we start to see price come into supply and obviously, start to distribute and start to make its way lower, then by all means, I'll look to take sales. If not, like I said, I'm not that interested, if I'm being honest. I'm not interested, but they're just not high priority for me. So moving over to the indices very quickly, we've got, starting off with US to the 30, right? US dirty 30. Right, so I can just zoom into, step out for a minute. So from a fundamental perspective, I'm bullish on these, bullish as hell, up until, Wednesday when the CPI comes out, again, depending on what comes out of it. But if we are bearish on the dollar because money's flowing out of the dollar, aka a safe haven asset, right? Then that means they're flowing into risky assets, and risky assets are also regarded as what, stocks, crypto, so on and so forth. So if that be the case, I'm bullish on this thing right now. So, I'm just following the market cycle to see if we can continue being bullish, right? So we've accumulated, reaccumulated. And obviously right now, we have just recently confirmed this previous reaccumulation over here by breaking this high. Don't know if you can see it. It's just beat the high, right? So because of that, I am just waiting for price to come back into these demand areas. This is obviously the reaccumulation over here. If I just highlight it, this is the reaccumulation over here. That's obviously caused price to, tell a lie. This one here, should I say, is the reaccumulation that caused price to directly break this high. So if price comes into the 50 and 80% of this, and obviously shows evidence of buyers coming in, then I'll send this thing higher. If it comes a bit lower, then obviously I'll just buy from here, right? Failing both of those, worst case, I guess I could wait for price to come into the 80%, which would be the lowest area in the demand area that I'll be looking at, ideally, and for price to go higher off of. But let's have a look and see if price can react from these areas. If it does, fantastic. I just need to see evidence of buyers stepping in, and then obviously I'll be looking to take those trades, those buyers to the upside. If we do continue lower in regards to the CPI come out Wednesday, then I'll be looking to target these highs. If not, then we could see a retracement, and obviously I'll entertain that and cross that bridge when it comes to it. So that's US 30. S&P to the 500, to the 500th degree. Yeah, we've got, again, very, very, very similar play. If I just zoom into where we are right now, maybe go on the 1 hour, I can see that the previous reaccumulation was obviously here. We've broken this high, so I'm just waiting for, where did my box go? My bastard box. Right, it's here, right? So, if price can come into here, and obviously give me evidence of buyers coming in, then I'm going to look to take that. If not, then what I will be doing, because again, if we come into here, for example, and CPI comes out on Wednesday and it comes out higher, then forget what I just said. Just forget all of this, because we're probably going to continue coming low and give a deeper retracement, right? So that is S&P to the 500th degree. So I'm going to start calling it for now. So, right, NASDAQ, again, the same story. We've broken this high. The only difference is NASDAQ has actually been taking the indices by storm, bro. Like, we came into the 50% already, as where I'm waiting for US 30 and S&P 5 to the 500th degree. I'm waiting for them to come down into the 50%. Obviously, this has already come in and it's already making its way higher. So, I'm not going to be as aggressive on this, because I know that the other, S&P 500 and US 30 are obviously leading it, right? So, sorry, are like behind, basically. So if this is on its way and the other two are trading behind, I'm just going to look to take any of these two here, right? So NASDAQ is leading it, so I'm kind of just going to let it do what it's going to do. If price is to potentially break this high and come back into maybe here and obviously make it higher, then I'll obviously look to take something. Outside of that, I will leave that alone. Right? So for UK 100, similar play. We've come into the previous reaccumulation. What's interesting actually is that we've actually come into the reaccumulation that caused this high to get broken. So essentially the reload, we've come into it and we've started to show evidence of potentially buyers coming in here. If I just go into a lower time frame very quickly, I'm seeing evidence of buyers coming in. We're seeing, buyers drives coming in. We're seeing these drives coming in. So, and we've obviously seen a final manipulation. So if we can break this high, then obviously, you can play it. It's Monday. So for me, I don't care if it looks juicy, bro. I've done enough testing on trades that are taken on Mondays, and a lot of the time it doesn't end the greatest. So knowing that, I'm not gonna do it anymore. So I'm not trading this if it happens today. If it comes in tomorrow after New York Stock Exchange and it wants to do that thing, then by all means I will take it, but not on a Monday, bro. Allow me. So last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, the Nikkei. So right now, because I'm bearish on obviously the yen, I'm bullish on the yen rather. Why am I bullish on the yen? Well, because they've held their rates, number one. They've held their rates, but why have they held their rates? They said because they wanted to see inflation. However, inflation is obviously upticking. The national core CPI for the yen and Tokyo CPI for the yen have both come up, I think, to like 3.5% from 2.9%, if I'm not mistaken. So if that's the case, that means they're probably going to end up, and their prices, obviously inflation is going higher. I remember reading that their rice prices obviously like almost doubled in price, which means, and obviously rice is obviously bought a lot in Japan. So obviously, inflation's obviously gonna continue going higher if that is going to continue to be the case. And if that's the case, then obviously that means, the Japanese stock market, when money is flowing out of safe haven assets in Japan, which is obviously their government bonds, when it's flowing out of them, it's going to be flowing into, the Japanese stock market, and vice versa. When money is flowing into, the Japanese yen, which it would be if inflation is continuing higher, because that means interest rates will continue higher, then that means obviously money will flow out of this. So because of that, I'm anticipating sales on this. So we've come into, on a higher time frame, we've come into previous redistribution into the 80%, if I'm not mistaken. Did it touch? Yes, it did. So it came in, and then obviously we were bullish from down here. We had the accumulation, looks like a reaccumulation in here. Reaccumulation, we've obviously now broken that. So if we've broken a previous reaccumulation, that's where buyers were adding, re-adding buy orders in. So if we've broken an area where buyers were coming in, then that means obviously sellers must be coming in instead. So now we've obviously broken that. We've come back into, so now I'll come back down to the 4 hour very quickly. Now we've come back into supply, i.e. higher than the 50%. We've come into it, and obviously we've given some sort of very ugly distribution in here, and obviously we made our way back into the 50 and 80 again. So on the lower time frame, if I start to see evidence of buyers coming in, which I haven't started to see just yet, so I'm kind of holding my horses on this. If I see sellers come in, without breaking this here, if I start to see maybe something like this now, where we break this previous, what looks to be a reaccumulation, if we break this now and come back in, then obviously I'll look to take a trade based off of that. Or if we break this and then maybe give a redistribution, then I'll look to take it based off of that as well. So for me, I'm bearish on the Nikkei until further notice. If we do break this, or let me go back into the lower time frame very quick. If price does end up breaking these highs, does that mean I'll know I'm not going to be bearish on this anymore? Well, technically no, because this is the previous redistribution, and we've still got some room, between here and here. We've still got, some room where price can dilly-dally before making its way lower, right? So I'm not gonna just, throw my toys out of the pram. I'll wait, and I'll look and see, okay, if we come up into here and redistribute, what can I look to do then? So with that being said, ladies and gents, I know it's been a little bit of a longer one, but I wanted to make sure I gave you guys as much detail and as much value as possible. And yeah, so I hope you guys have found this well. I am going to be releasing another video this week as well, maybe tomorrow or maybe even today, I'll see, of the Euro USD slappers that I caught last week. Those of you that follow me on social media would have seen that as well. It was very lit. It was very, very delicious, can't lie. So yeah, I'll be sharing that with you guys this week as well. So stay tuned on that. But not without any further ado, outside of that, should I say, if there is anything else that you guys need, any questions that you guys have got, any topics you want me to break down, any trading stuff you want me to break down, then let me know, and I will be more than happy to give you guys some game on those things. But without any further ado, now it's been amazing. I've been Mr. Nate B Lit. You guys have been amazing. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you guys very, very soon.